Welcome to the deep dive. Um, Usually we say get ready to, learn something new, but today, I think, get ready to be a little bit freaked out.
Oh,
Yeah, we're going deep into cybersecurity today, and let me tell you, the waters are a little choppy today.
sounds a bit
It
ominous.
is. So we've got a couple of academic papers. They're called SLP and FOP.
Yeah, I saw that.
Pretty catchy names, right? And then there's also a website that kind of summarizes those findings, and all of them are pointing to, uh, I guess, the same conclusion.
Hmm.
There are some brand new security vulnerabilities in, you guessed it, Apple Silicon CPUs.
Oh, no, not Apple.
Yeah, so that means your iPhones, your Macs, your iPads, all that good stuff.
Well, that is concerning, especially considering what those vulnerabilities can do.
Yeah, so these vulnerabilities can potentially leak sensitive user data.
Not just passwords.
We're talking like potentially anything
Ugh.
that's stored in your device's memory. Emails, browsing history, even financial information.
That's scary.
And the kicker is that these exploits can work even on sites that you think are super secure.
Like what with the little lock in the browser?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
So much for security.
So, yeah, it's definitely a cause for concern, and both of these vulnerabilities, both SLACAN, FLIP, they exploit this technique called speculative execution.
Right, which is pretty common for optimization.
Yeah, most modern CPUs use it.
Optimize performance.
Okay, but I think we need to back up for a second because I know the term, but for our listeners who might not be as familiar, could you maybe break down speculative execution a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So think of it this way. Like your CPU is like a race car driver who's constantly trying to anticipate the next turn.
Okay.
So it speeds ahead with calculations that are based on what it thinks is going to happen next in the code, and it's usually right, which is why things run faster.
Got it.
But, well,
Sometimes
and-
it's wrong.
exactly. That's when things get a little hairy.
Yeah, a little dicey.
Yeah, and that's where SLAP and FLP come in.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they take advantage of these mispredictions in some very clever ways.
So SLAP, tell me about that one. So SLAP targets what are called load addresses, which basically means that the CPU is trying to guess where in memory it needs to grab data from next. So if it guesses wrong, it might end up revealing data it shouldn't have access to.
And then there's FLOP.
FLOP is even sneakier. It goes after the data values themselves, so the CPU is actually trying to predict the outcome of a calculation before it's actually even done.
Wow.
Yeah, and a wrong guess there can really create a security hole big enough to, grab a truck through.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so these aren't just like theoretical flaws.
Right.
The researchers in these papers, they actually show how these exploits can work in the real world.
So some real-world scenarios.
Real world scenarios, yeah, and some of the examples are, really alarming.
Okay, give me the scary stuff.
So with SLAP, they were able to steal data from a website just by having the user's mouse hover over a malicious link.
Oh, wow.
They even managed to leak information from a Proton Mail inbox.
Proton Mail.
Proton Mail,
I thought that was like the most secure email.
which is, supposed to be known for its very robust security.
Yeah, that's scary.
That is pretty scary.
Wow.
And with FLOP, they were able to demonstrate attacks on both Safari and Chrome.
Oh, so both.
Both. Which is significant because, Chrome is generally considered to have stronger defenses
Right then, Safari.
against these types of exploits.
Oh, okay.
And they were able to read like snippets of text from memory,
Okay.
things like lines from The Great Gatsby or Harry Potter, even though those books were never actually, open.
This is just in the memory.
In the memory, they were never accessed by any program.
So it's like these exploits are reading the CPU's mind, even when it's trying to keep secrets.
Yeah, and it really underscores that even systems that we perceive as secure
Yeah.
can have vulnerabilities that, we haven't even considered.
Okay, so we've got these exploits, SLAP and
Yeah.
FLOP, and they're both, using this speculative execution thing to basically trick the CPU into giving up secrets.
Right.
But before we, totally spiral into a tech panic here, let's try to, understand this a little bit better.
Sure.
What's actually happening at, the hardware level
At the hardware
that
level.
allows this to work?
So both attacks rely on something called type confusion,
Type confusion.
which basically means that they trick the CPU into misinterpreting the type of data that it's working with.
Okay, so it's like giving someone a box labeled cookies,
Yeah.
but it's full of spiders.
Yeah, that's a vivid analogy. But yeah,
Okay.
essentially, the CPU is expecting one kind of data, gets another.
Right.
And because of that confusion, it ends up, doing things it shouldn't, like leaking information.
And the scary part is that we're talking about vulnerabilities that are baked right into the hardware,
Right, into the silicon
not a
chip.
software glitch that
Yeah.
you can just like patch up.
Exactly, and that's what makes these exploits so significant.
Yeah.
They're exposing vulnerabilities in the very architecture of Apple Silicon CPUs.
So it's not an easy fix.
Not an easy fix at all.
So what's the solution then? I mean, does Apple need to like go back to the drawing board and, I don't know, completely redesign its chips?
I mean, a complete redesign, yeah, that would be the most comprehensive solution, but, it's a massive undertaking,
Yeah.
especially considering how many devices are, already in use.
Right. It's not like they can just snap their fingers
No,
and
no.
replace every iPhone and Mac out there.
Exactly. So in the short term, software mitigations are really the most likely approach.
Okay.
These updates, they can't eliminate the underlying hardware flaws, but they can at least make it a lot harder for attackers to exploit them.
But like you said before, it's kind of a constant arms race.
It is.
Patch one hole and they find another one.
That's cybersecurity in a nutshell.
So where does this leave, like, everyday users? Are we just sitting ducks here?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, these vulnerabilities, they are serious, but it is important to remember that exploits like SLIP and FLOP, they are complex. And they require, a high level of technical sophistication to actually pull off.
Okay.
So the average person probably isn't going to be targeted by these specific attacks.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we should be complacent, right?
Right.
The research behind SLAP and FLOP, it really highlights how important it is to stay informed
Yeah.
and to take, basic precautions to protect your digital life.
So what can we do? We've talked about keeping our devices updated.
Yeah.
But are there other steps we can take?
Absolutely. One of the most effective ways to protect yourself is to, be mindful of what you share online.
Yep.
The less sensitive information you put out there, the less there is to be compromised, right?
It's like that old saying, loose lips sink ships.
Exactly.
But in this case, loose data can sink your digital life.
Exactly. So, think twice before sharing like personal details like your address or phone number or financial information online.
Right.
And be especially cautious on websites that, request that information without a clear need or robust security measures in place.
What about passwords? I mean, we always hear about like using strong passwords,
Yeah.
unique passwords for every account.
Right.
But if these exploits can like bypass all these security measures,
Yeah.
does it even matter anymore?
It absolutely does.
Okay.
Strong passwords are still essential. They're your first line of defense.
Okay.
And they make it that much harder for attackers to get access, even if they do exploit a vulnerability.
So it's all about like creating layers of protection.
Layers, yeah.
Just to make it as difficult as possible
As difficult as
for
possible.
them to get in.
Exactly.
Right.
And another crucial layer is using multi-factor authentication whenever you can.
Oh, yeah. Multi-factor.
Yeah, it adds an extra step to the login process, typically requiring you to confirm your identity through like a separate device or an app.
It's like having a security guard at the door,
Exactly.
even if someone manages to pick the lock.
Precisely. So multi-factor authentication makes it significantly harder for attackers to gain access, even if they have your password.
Got it. So enable it on everything.
Yeah, everything. Email, banking, social media, all of it.
Okay.
It's a simple but very effective way to improve your security.
Okay, so we've talked about software updates, being careful about what we share online, strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, anything else we can do.
Yes, being aware of social engineering tactics is also really important.
Social engineering, what's that?
So it's basically the art of like manipulating people
Right.
into giving up information or access that they shouldn't.
So it's like the digital version of a con artist.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like they trick you into trusting them and then, bam, they get you.
Exactly. So be wary of, suspicious emails, phone calls, text messages that ask for your information or urge you to click on links or download attachments.
Right. If something seems fishy, don't click it.
Don't click it. Exactly. And remember, legitimate organizations, they will never ask for your password or sensitive information over email or phone.
Okay.
So if you get a request like that,
Yeah.
that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. Report it.
Report it to the organization directly
Okay.
and delete the message.
Got it. So it's a combination of like technical safeguards and just good old-fashioned street smarts.
Pretty much.
I gotta say, learning about all this SLAP and FLOP stuff, it's made me a little paranoid.
Yeah, I get it.
It feels like, every time we figure out how to make our devices faster and more powerful, we just open up this like whole new can of security worms.
It can be a bit unnerving, that's for sure.
So is this just like the new normal now? Do we just have to accept that our data is always going to be at risk no matter what we do?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, yeah, this whole cat and mouse game between, security researchers and these attackers, it's probably going to keep going.
Right.
But it's important to remember that, knowledge is our best weapon here.
Yeah, makes sense.
By understanding these threats, we can actually take steps, proactive steps, to try to mitigate them.
Right. So instead of just freaking out,
Yeah,
we should focus on what we can control.
exactly. And that starts with, acknowledging how important security researchers are.
Right. They're the ones doing the work.
They're the ones on the front lines, constantly poking around, looking for weaknesses, trying to make the industry better,
Yeah. And this SLAP and FLOP research is a perfect example, right?
Hmm.
They didn't just point out these theoretical vulnerabilities.
Right. They showed how it worked
They actually showed how they work.
in the real world.
Yeah, in real world scenarios.
Yeah. And they did it in a way that's, pretty easy to understand, even if you're not a cybersecurity expert.
Right.
Which is, I think, really crucial for getting people's attention and making sure that, people actually take action.
So it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not just on the tech companies or the researcher.
Right.
It's on all of us.
Absolutely. So, that brings us back to the question of what we can do as individuals.
Right, to protect ourselves.
Yeah, we've talked about software updates, strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, being aware of social engineering.
Yeah. Are there other layers of protection we can add, especially, when we're talking about these hardware level vulnerabilities that feel, I don't know, a little bit out of our control?
Well, one of the most effective things you can do is, practice good digital hygiene.
Digital hygiene.
Yeah, think of it like washing your hands, like a simple habit that can drastically reduce, the spread of germs.
Okay, I like that analogy. So what does good digital hygiene look like in practice?
So it starts with, being mindful of your digital footprint.
Okay.
The more sensitive information you share online,
Yeah.
the greater the potential damage is going to be if that data is ever compromised.
Right. So it's like leaving your front door wide open, inviting everyone in.
Exactly. So, be selective about what you share, especially on social media. Right. Think twice before posting, things like your address, your phone number, your birthday.
And be wary of those online quizzes and surveys that ask all sorts of random personal questions.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They seem harmless, but who knows where that data ends up.
Exactly. So, good digital hygiene, it's about being aware of what you share and
Right
just
on.
being a little more cautious online.
Okay, so be aware, be cautious, got it.
Yeah. And remember, legitimate organizations are never going to ask for your password
Right,
or sensitive information over email or phone.
right, that's a scam.
If you get a request like that, huge red flag.
Report it.
Delete the message.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
It is.
But, being vigilant, being a little bit skeptical, that's really how you can reduce your risk.
It's interesting, though, that these hardware vulnerabilities, they bring up bigger questions than just how to protect our passwords or be careful what we post online.
That's true.
It feels like it gets at something more fundamental
It does.
about, the way we design and use technology.
Yeah, it forces us to kind of confront this tension in the tech world
Okay.
between, this constant push for speed and performance.
Yeah, faster, better, more powerful.
But then also, the critical need for security.
Right. And it seems like we're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible without really fully considering the potential downsides.
Yeah, and the SLAP and FLOP research is, it's a reminder that even the most advanced technologies, they're not perfect.
And the stakes just get higher,
Hmm.
right? As we rely on these technologies more and more.
Absolutely. So I think it's crucial that we start having these, open and honest conversations.
Yeah, about the trade-offs we're making.
Yeah, do we want speed and convenience,
Even at the expense of security.
or can we find a better balance?
It's tough.
It's a complex issue, no easy answers, but it's a conversation we need to have, as a society.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not just about the technical solutions, right?
Right.
It's also about the ethical considerations.
Yeah, the researchers who uncovered SLO and FLOP, they faced a tough choice, right?
They did.
Do they disclose these vulnerabilities knowing that they could be exploited?
Right.
Or do they stay quiet, hoping that, it forces some security improvements?
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah, tough one.
And I think it really highlights the responsibility that comes with knowledge and innovation.
That's a good point and a good place to wrap things up, I think.
Yeah.
So As we navigate this increasingly complex digital landscape, I think the main takeaway is that we're all stakeholders in this.
We are.
Our choices, both individually and, collectively,
Yeah.
they're going to shape the future of technology and how it impacts our lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that thought-provoking note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into the wild world of SLA and FLOP.
Sounds good.
We hope you found it informative.
And maybe a little empowering.
Yeah, a little bit empowering. Remember, knowledge is power, and
It.
vigilance is key.
Stay safe out there.
Stay safe out there in the digital world.